Well, Beth, it's a massive honor to have one of my favorite people, one of my wife's favorite people. Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited that you've got a new book coming out. Every time you've got any kind of new teaching, every woman in my life goes crazy, and I've even peeked in on a bunch of them myself because you're one of my favorite teachers around, and so I want to hear a lot about your book, Chasing Vines, and we'll talk about that at the end of the podcast. But the reason you're on today is not only are you a world-renowned teacher, but I also respect and admire you as being a fantastic leader. And so I'd love to kind of just peer into your life and ask you to be as transparent as you're comfortable with and help us all become better as a leader. If that's game with you, we'll do it today.
Oh, I'd be honored to talk through that. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, yes.
So I'm curious, Beth, a little bit about the story behind the story in your life. When was it that you started to discover that maybe not only were you gifted at creating content and such, but you started to see that you had a leadership gift?
Early on, I would have began to have emerged in whatever environment it was, certainly by middle school and certainly by high school and in college. And ordinarily, it was in things like student government and in different women's organizations and in church organizations. And because I usually think of having started really formally speaking when I was 25, because that was the first time I would tell you a formal invitation to speak at a real live microphone in a real live group that had come together for a conference. And I was just doing one of the breakout sessions, but it was a formal introduction to speak. And so that was 25. But when I look back, Craig, and I was a chaplain in my sorority in college, and then I was president the next year, you can see that God was throwing me up there over and over. And again, I want to say that doesn't mean I was good at it. That means he was giving me practice with being up front. So it's a wonderful thing for it to be something that you know God had intended to do and placed in you, but it is also a scary thing because it can mean that for those of us to whom leading comes a little more naturally, we might not be as careful with it because it does come naturally as someone who is not given to it so quickly. And by that, I mean, I just want to lead somebody where God would want them to go. I mean, that's always the scary part, isn't it?
Right, it sure is. And I'm curious, so 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, you're starting to rise in some leadership roles. There's always kind of a debate, Beth. Some people say, well, you're either born a leader or you can actually grow in your leadership. I certainly believe maybe people do have natural gifts, but I believe everybody can grow. Did you have an experience or two maybe that stood out in your mind in those formative years that you might have failed at something or you might have accidentally succeeded at something that helped develop you into becoming a better leader?
Yes. And I want to piggyback on what you just said, Craig, because not only can they must, we have to grow as a leader. That raw gifting means nothing without learning what it is we're trying to lead toward, what the vision is, and what sound leadership looks like. And I don't think anybody has that. I think we may be born with some tendencies toward being spokespeople and having the ability to stand in front of a group. But no, every one of us is going to have to learn. And a lot of it is going to come the hard way. And I happen to be in surroundings where the kind of counsel I was getting and correction I was getting, both of which we absolutely must have, was not the kind, Craig, that killed you. It was not the kind that devastated and ruined you. I grew up in a surrounding, particularly in my serving life in ministry, in a surrounding that was safe to fail in, because of course I did. And the other thing, Craig, this was also true of you. I think this is so important. I had to keep getting back up because I was in a situation where I taught 2 different classes every single week. every week. And very often there would be a third time I was speaking that week, maybe at a conference or a luncheon at a dinner. I didn't get to go, I'm just never doing it again. I was already scheduled for 3 days from then, 4 days from then. And I thank God for that because so much of it is endurance, is knowing you cannot master it. You can't. You can't. You will still blow it. There, seasoned speakers, you could give the same message 10 times, and the 10th time it'd be like, what happened there?
So true.
There was just nothing. It completely fell. So there has to be that getting back up and getting back out there again. We're in such a shame and honor culture that if we don't get past feeling like we can't show our face again, we are never going to be great leaders.
Yes, that's so true. And Beth, I love what you said, that you were in a culture where you felt safe to fail. And I think that's such an important thing to create in our own cultures. And I love the people that I've interacted with in your organization. Just you obviously attract, build, inspire, retain some of the best people. I'm curious as to what you do to create that type of environment where your people know, oh my gosh, Beth has high expectations. She really is expecting the best. But if we don't succeed, or if we try something that fails, we're still in a safe place. What do you do to create that environment with your leaders?
Well, I don't know that when I started that very training that I knew exactly how to vocalize what I was doing. I knew, Craig, what I needed from others, and that's what I tried to give, which was room for grace, which was being taught to do it with as much excellence as I knew how, being teachable. All the times that the camera goes back off, all the tapings that I've been in where let's do another take, and then you have to have guts enough to go at it again and be where you're not so sensitive that you can't pull yourself together. I knew what I needed. And so what I have tried to do at Living Proof is provide to them what I needed and what made it safe for me. And it's so wonderful that you're asking this right now, because for the first time in Living Proof's existence, we're a small staff. We only run about 16 people. We contract out for as much as we can and keep our overhead low and keep our house small. So there's a lot of accountability here, and I can keep my hands on everything going on. And for the very first time, I have several real life communicators in our midst that were actually hired for other reasons, whether to do social media or some other area of overseeing product and resource development, whatever it may be. But I was able early on to see, wow, these are communicators. These are people that I could put on camera to minister on the screen. And so I've had this practice just here lately of being up in front of that screen with them or putting them up in front of it and cheering them on and going, listen, get comfortable with saying, oops, I need to try again.
Right.
Get comfortable with not being great in the beginning and not having it in your mind. Craig, one of the things that I have to do and that I try to get across to them is we're not trying to be great. We're trying to help people. Now, if we can get to where we're, by the grace of God, great at helping people, then that's huge. But the idea of being impressive for impressive sake is of zero importance. What we want to do is help people along their way and in their journey, actually serve and minister to people. Well, sometimes that doesn't always come slick. Not everything has to be slick.
Right.
Some things can just be fun. I mean, they can just be fun. You can just flat mess up, make a little bit of an idiot of yourself, laugh at it, and go on. And sometimes make the decision that stays right on tape.
Yep.
Leave that right where it is.
Yep.
And so I think, this won't surprise you, Craig, and I get the idea that you're the same. I don't think that having a little bit of fun and doing a whole lot of serving are exclusive things. I think you can do both at the same time. I want my staff to think yes, it is a lot of hard work, but it is also a blast to serve.
Yeah, I love your attitude too, and I've seen you so many times. And when we were together and with my wife and your team in Australia, you did that. You weren't going for perfection, but you were striving for excellence. And especially with your teachers that come up, it's really, really hard to always hit it when you're communicating. You can't. And so you've created a culture where they are safe to fail. One time, Beth, I was working with a team member that was very capable, but had such a high standard for herself that she was paralyzed with fear of failure. So the assignment I gave her was in the next quarter, I want you to fail 3 times. In other words, I want you to get to where you've pushed yourself beyond your limits,
Craig.
and you're going to make 3 aggressive mistakes. They're not going to be passive ones. And that was the assignment. And so that was a way of saying, we don't always hit it right. And I think you've done a fantastic job. I'm amazed that you've got a global impact with 16 employees. That's such a great inspiration that you can have a big influence and keep your team as lean as you can. I love that. That speaks to the quality of your people. And whenever I've interacted with your team, or you've talked to me about how they're helping navigate things, you do surround yourself with great people. When you're selecting people to surround yourself with and really looking for potential in people, what are some of the qualities that you say, that's what I'm looking for in leaders?
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things I'm looking for, of course, is shared vision and shared passion, because that takes us a long way. One of the things that I love to be vulnerable about in a leadership podcast or opportunity to communicate any kind of training is that I have dealt with a lot of fear. I know a lot of people who don't. I have really good friends that say that they really do not get scared or nervous before they speak. That's very rare for me. I've had times when I was about to go into an arena with 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 people that I honestly, if I had just bent forward the least little bit, would have thrown up. It was not what I went looking for. I am suited, or what I think, this is obviously God had different ideas for this season of time. But in my mind, if I was just looking for where I was naturally suited, where I would not deal with a good amount of fear, it would be a classroom. I'm a teacher. I can speak, but my natural habitat is the classroom. Give me a marker board. Give me PowerPoint. I am one happy girl. I want to hear, are they groaning over the power of what we're talking about, or over the hardship of it, whatever it may be. I love that dynamic. So I have dealt with a lot of fear, but what has always taken me there is that I felt stronger about what God had called me to do. I was more passionate about it than I was afraid. Now, sometimes it was only this much more because I was really afraid. But what I wanted to share, I was passionate enough about to get me through the obstacles, be it that it was very difficult, be the call for endurance, or just that the circumstances were very intimidating. But that passion for the actual ministry of it had to exceed everything else. And I've got to tell you, I'm so glad. It's so fun to talk about leadership specifically, because I don't get to do this as often as I would like. But I'll tell you, in a situation recently, without giving any kind of clue what realm it was in of my serving life, I have been working with a leader that has, all those raw leadership qualities. And you would ask me, what do I look for? Well, I'm watching for that. I'm watching for how much a group around her. I'm a big believer that God, for instance, in the church context, that God will use the people around you to tell you where you're gifted, because it's going to work. It's going to be effective. And so I thought this person has very, very natural leadership inclinations, but she did not have a servant's heart. And I kept noticing when I would team her up that the team member would not have any place in it. Do you understand what I'm saying? I think that's true with a lot of leaders. We're just like, we want to go solo. Well, leaders work in teams. And everybody on the team is part of the thing. And I'm a big, big team player. And so I watched for a while, but I had to draw her back in and let's really practice serving and let's really practice being under authority, because you've not quite learned that yet, because there's a difference, an enormous difference between being a boss and being a leader.
Right.
Any of us with that inclination, we can boss people. Mm-hmm. That's not the same thing. And so I'm really looking for a servant leader. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you, that certainly is true in our faith context, but really, what context would that not be true in, Craig?
Right.
The greatest leaders in any organization serve their people. They do not just stand up at the top. They serve their people.
Yep. Yeah, I love your passion for this, because sometimes we just look for leaders that have great talent, but you're looking for heart. You're looking for value alignment.
Yes.
You can teach skills, but you can't train values. That's why we often say it.
No.
And
No.
You want the passion level to be high, not just talent, but passion. Someone to be a team player, someone to be coachable. I think those are all
That's right.
super important.
And I want them to love the people, Craig.
Yes.
I want them to love who they're serving. If they don't, it's like, it doesn't mean you don't have a place. It just means, you know what, tend to that. But if you don't esteem, when I hear fellow leaders make fun of their groups, Craig, and mock them and ridicule them, and I don't know how often you hear that, but I'm not seldom in a situation where we're going to serve this group out here, but we're already making fun of them in the green room. I got no patience for that.
That shows, and it shows in your organization too. I'd love to spend a few minutes here, because I think you can help a lot of leaders. Whenever someone is leading a business, leading an organization, leading a nonprofit, there's always going to be critics. There's going to be controversy. There's going to be pushback. That's a part of it. And so I asked this kind of jokingly with a smile on my face, do you have anyone that ever criticizes you? and I'm laughing. And for the
Craig,
yes.
you know what I never could have foreseen, being the person that nobody else could possibly have wanted to be. When I can't tell you how many people say to me, Beth, I'm so sorry that you're you. And what they mean by that is, oh man, it must be hard to be you. And it sometimes is, but no, I could not have quite seen this season coming.
Let me give the context and let you answer this, because a lot of our listeners won't have any context. We got a lot of business leaders, and some people I'm glad even to introduce to you, but since they won't understand, in the church circles, sometimes the churches are a little bit behind where like the business world are. Like we would celebrate male or female in any leadership role in business circles. In some church circles right now, there would be controversy of like, why would a woman be doing what she's doing? And so I think, just to be fair, you've been a leading voice in helping spread a very powerful message. And you've also probably taken more shots than a lot of people. So I'd love to kind of get into your mind. How do you handle that? What do you do to keep yourself going when there's a lot of opposition?
What really changed things was just being outspoken enough in the public forums of social media to push back on some things that I found to be convictional things like sexism and misogyny and racism, things that are like, boy, these are important matters. And because I serve in a faith context, they're antithetical to our calling. So, man, I have been outspoken, but, I feel like one way I handle it is because, again, I'll go back to what I said a few minutes ago. When the passion exceeds the intimidation or the fear, then I can do a whole lot of things. And if I feel strongly, and Craig, do not misunderstand me, I'll find out in heaven how wrong I was about so many things. But to the best of my understanding, to the best of seeking God, poring over the scriptures and staring into the Gospels at what Christ-likeness looks like, I'm trying to live out of those convictions. And I'll err and make a lot of mistakes, but my belief in that will carry me through a lot. And I'm also going to tell you this, I learned early on, and I hope so much we have some young leaders or some leaders that are early on in that kind of position listening to us, because I want to say something. There is no such thing as leading and not being hit, because you're out there in the open air. You're going to be the one that's going to be hit first, because you are the one that is visible or is most audible. So for one thing, where people think, how does she stand it today with all of this suddenly? Oh, Craig, I'm sure you'd say this too. It's always been there. It's just that, thank goodness, what the Lord does is that early on it was like this, and then it got to be a little more like this, and a little more like this, and a little more like this, and now it's big, but it still is a fraction of the population that I serve, and I'm so thankful to say that I still get a lot more encouragement and support and love than I get hate. Now the hate is vicious. But I wasn't called by God to be popular and to be approved of by people. I still gotta lay my head on my pillow with my heart in peace about what I stood for. And then I gotta get up the next morning. This is the most important thing to me. I'm gonna get up the next morning and I'm gonna go into my prayer time. And I'm going to be with God, who was very mindful that I chickened out the day before, and I did not speak up to something that I thought was convictionally wrong, and I thought it was wrong according to the scriptures. And so, that's who I answer to. And there's a way we have to do it, and I've not always done it that way. I wish I could say I've always been godly in the way I've reacted to some of the vitriol. Of course I haven't. But I know this, a leader, any of us who talk a lot, I've been reading Proverbs here lately, and of course I'm paraphrasing how it says it, but those of many words have much folly. We're just going to. And so any leader, any of us who are communicators that use a lot of words are going to make a lot of mistakes. Sure. And I think that one of the first lessons is we've got to learn to own them and to go, I should not have said that. Or I should not have said it that way. Or man, I mean, I've just had times when I've come back around on social media and gone, you know what? I was in a bad mood. I remember 3 years ago when I was first very outspoken about something that was not well received. I remember how easy it would have been. I wanted so badly to get off social media because I thought, you know what? I don't need this. I'm happy in a local ministry. I'm happy I love what God's called me to do right here. I told somebody a couple of days ago, I said, it's too late for me to quit. I may be tempted to drop out of the public eye, Craig, but it never occurs to me to quit. I'm in to the death.
Well, that shows you're one of the most courageous leaders. My personal philosophy, I honestly choose not to fight on social media because it is it's kind of bloody, and I'm going to try to choose when I speak, how I speak, and not let others dictate.
Yes.
But I actually applaud the way you've done it in a way that. And I understand the reasons and I respect and admire that. I would love it if you could, Beth. We've got a lot of young leaders that listen to this, and you've kind of grown in your capacity to endure opposition. If you had been shot at the age of 25 the way you were in the last 2 years, it would have been really difficult. To a young leader, and maybe even I love that you're speaking to our female leaders because I really want to say we value you. Speak to them or any leader.
I'd love to.
That's just now starting and they're taking their first few shots and they haven't been stung before. Yes. What do you tell them?
I love, Craig, to read biographies. I love it. You will not find a single one that did not endure through what was nearly the impossible.
Right.
So, we have to do that. We're not in it for the applause. We're in it for people to be served and helped, and we're going to persevere so that happens.
That's so true. And just to kind of summarize in some ways, to the young leader, you really do have to let your love of the mission outweigh the pain of resistance and
Yes.
criticism. And I think
Absolutely.
you've done that so well. And I'm going to transition this toward your book because I want to hear more about your book, Chasing Vines. I think we actually have books released on the same day. I've got one called Dangerous Prayers coming out.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, so that's
so fun.
I hope they bulk ours together on Amazon. It would be fun. But,
I do too.
Yeah. So you talked about pruning. I'd love to know, as a leader, and then we'll get more into your book. Sometimes you have to cut back to see growth. Was there ever a time in Living Proof that you had to remove something? It could have been a person, a team, a product initiative to cut back in order to move forward?
A perfect example of this is, say, for instance, about 3 years ago when I became outspoken about sexism, and I mean, really, really swung out hard. It just caused the biggest blow up. And there were people that I had studied with for a whole lot of years that were so offended by it that I thought they're not ever going to get over it. And I mean, they swore and declared, I just don't. And I thought, but I did it for women. So it was hard for me to wrap my mind around why a woman would be offended that I took up for women. But anyway, that was the situation. It was more complicated than that. But Craig, I was absolutely sure that I had basically blown up the whole ministry. I really was, because I had so hit my base and was getting so many letters and hearing so much criticism that it was not hard for me to come up with that conclusion. But it was so clarifying to us and became one of our favorite things. And what I'm going to tell you is that we were fully prepared for the ministry to go back right there. Mm-hmm. And instead, the Lord cut some things out that needed to go, cut back some things on me that loved approval and that wanted so much to have the affections of people that I had served so long. He cut things back and then he grew it again.
Mm-hmm. So powerful. And Beth, I just appreciate your transparency and courage, because I can only imagine how many leaders right now are feeling like that. They've had a massive setback. And it's kind of like you said, sometimes you have to go backwards before you go forward. And I would even say, to the point that, sometimes you may get pruned and it's not your choice. Other times you may actually choose to do the pruning, meaning there might be some area that you choose to cut back and say, we're not putting the resources there anymore. We've done it for years, but we're going to reallocate those into another place and believe we can make a bigger difference. And like you, there have been so many times where we'd had a setback and it actually propelled us forward, or we intentionally decided to cut something back. And just as we're kind of entering into, we're still early into a new year. If you're listening, to the podcast right as it comes out, this is a great time not just to add to your to-do list, but add to your to-don't list and say, we're not going to do this. We're going to reallocate resources. And so I appreciate you so much. Your content has benefited so many people. So many of the ladies in my life are different because of that. And then kind of personally, I always tell you, I sneak in. Like, I've been through a couple studies that are more designed for women, but I kind of have been in them and just love. You
just deal with it.
Yeah. No, it's just it's so powerful. And
it touches me, Craig.
Your new book is called Chasing Vines. Could you tell us a little bit about it and the exact launch date and how we can get it?
Yes, February 4th, which you are very, very much thinking toward yourself and excited about it. And I think in my upbringing, I came from such an unstable home and felt like I felt trashy inside. I felt like if people knew, they wouldn't like me. I just felt a lot of shame. I come from a place where I felt like we were always behind, even though we weren't as far as people could see us from outside. But I don't know, somehow I developed such a heart for the person that feels like they never, ever measure up. And that the good things were always, or the meaningful things were always for people who had done better than I had done. I made so many mistakes and lived in so much sin, and I was just so messed up. And so it's so important to me to be able to say to somebody, listen, life is not always fun. You're not always having a great time, but the promise of God is that we can always be fruitful, that even the hardest season, that even Satan himself, even the most hateful people on the earth, nobody can take that from us if we'll entrust our lives to Christ and we'll be embedded in him and in the ongoing knowledge of how much he loves us, that it may not be fun, but it can dang well be fruitful.
I want to tell you, thank you for your passion, your hard work through the years. Thank you for enduring some of the more difficult seasons and coming back and producing content that's changed so many people's lives. The book comes out on February the 4th. It's called Chasing Vines, and I'm assuming they can get this book anywhere books are sold. As
Yes.
we're still early in the new year, to our leaders, I'd love for you just to take the metaphors that Beth writes about in the book and apply them to your leadership. Meaning, if you want to see something grow, you break up the
Yes.
ground, you plant
Yes.
some seeds, you put some water on it, you let God do the growing. And one day when you do all the right things in the right environment, you do produce a harvest. And so I pray whatever it is in your leadership, you'd prepare the ground and then put some seeds. In other words, do something different in your leadership. Have some faith that something good's going to grow and you'll produce great fruit and make a difference in a lot of people's lives. Beth,
That's the truth. And
you're a hero to so many people. Thank you.
As I say bye, I want to remind somebody in leadership, sometimes I've heard it said, and I think this is true, whether it's a church or whether it is a corporation, a business corporation, sometimes revival of a place, of an environment, is as much about who goes as who stays. Do not be afraid to do what you know you need to do to go forward.
So I want to highlight that, and that's worth the whole podcast. Sometimes the growth or the revival, sometimes it's as much by someone who goes as someone who stays.
Yep.
Don't be afraid to do what you know you're supposed to do. Beth, thank you so much. You're a great friend. You're so transparent. We tell our leaders all the time, be yourself. Don't feel pressure to get it all right. Be yourself, because people would rather follow a leader who's always real than one who's always right.